Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast, brought to you by Onyx. And I'm here with Phil Mazur with the CFO Mission. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been chatting for quite a while, and I was really excited to get you on the show because there are a lot of people that are in the industry talking right now about how to automate your processes or document your processes or how to use Zaps to improve what you're doing on the inside. But what I've found through coaching entrepreneurs is a lot of them are really good at doing the thing, but they're not really good at what happens when I get the money for doing the thing, and how do I actually track that money, and where does the money go, and what's the best way to utilize that. And that's been something that over the years I've struggled with. I've had people on my team who are really good financially, and then when those people leave, you realize what a hole that is if you don't have that in place. And I know that is a sweet spot for you, and so I wanted to bring your expertise to our audience. And so before we just jump in, it'd be great if you could give us a little bit of a background on what your expertise is, how you kind of got to this place. Just share a little bit of your background with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I am adding gray hairs at an increasingly fast pace. So I'm 44 years old. I've been in the business world for a little over, almost 25 years, really, because I started my first corporate job when I was still in college. I was 19 years old. I worked for U.S. Steel. I was in Pittsburgh. That's where I was born and raised. And I did that for 13 years in the kind of corporate world, just moving my way up in accounting and finance related positions. I got a finance degree, and I was really interested in stocks, and I loved investing and things like that. When I was in college, I thought I was going to move to New York and be a stockbroker, and right before I graduated, 9/11 happened, and that kind of made that look a little bit different for me. But what I realized when I tried to get a job was that a lot of those jobs were actually sales jobs, and sales was like scary to me. I wanted nothing to do with it. So I worked in a manufacturing company, and what really interested me about it, which I didn't really find this out about myself until later on as I started to realize what I do and don't like. I liked business, and I liked learning about a business kind of through the numbers. And I also liked working with people like you or business owners kind of as the right-hand man, because that first 13 years, a lot of my positions were just moving me through different parts of a steelmaking business, and there's a lot of different pieces to it. But I was matched up and sat next to a general manager or a division manager or a plant manager as I kind of worked my way up, and they always needed this interpretation of the numbers. Like, tell me the story. Like, the people that didn't understand the numbers and the trends and stuff like that and how to crunch them, so to speak, they needed help telling the story. And that's what I realized that I really liked, was telling the story. So as I did that, I moved out of the corporate world because I got sick of corporate world because there was too much red tape, things like that. Took a couple other jobs, transitioning to kind of more of a finance executive or a CFO, as you might call it, and realized that I really enjoyed the smaller entrepreneurial type businesses. And I landed at Evernest. They were called GK Houses at the time. This was 2015-ish, I believe. And I was really excited about the vision that they had painted for me. Matthew Whitaker he was like, I remember sitting across the desk table from him as he gave me a job offer, and I was like, I think I could come work for you if you can give me, this much more. And he was like, I don't even know if I can afford that. I'm like, well, that means you need me. So, that was just kind of how I, found myself into what I really call small business, and that's how I landed in property management. And it just went from there. And property management, it's an interesting business, but it's not that unique. When it comes to business, there's a lot of things about business, small business in particular, that are very standard and very fundamental. And what I've enjoyed about it most, I think, is helping people go on that journey to whatever they want, whatever their vision is. And there's a part of that that's telling the story about the numbers or the facts. And then there's the other part, which is actually helping people figure out what the heck they do want. Because a lot of times they don't know, or they just get so busy after they get that first thing that they wanted, which might be financial freedom or their own business or whatever. And then all this stuff happens and it gets crazy and they can get lost in all the details. And I like to come in there too and help kind of unscramble and reorganize things and help people get where they really want to go.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've noticed too through our coaching program is there are plateaus where people will get to a certain plateau and then they kind of get stuck. And without knowing the financial side of, can I invest? Can I hire additional resources? Can I invest in new technology? Can I put in new infrastructure? Can I expand into a different market? Without knowing the financial side, it kind of holds them back. And so they kind of get to these plateaus. Have you noticed the same thing from what you've been working on? Like the people that come to you, is there sort of a sweet spot with number of doors or gross revenue, or where do you see where people really start to struggle with, hey, I'm providing a service, I'm generating some revenue, but yet I'm not really sure, am I making money, am I losing money? Like I got money in my bank account, so I guess we're doing all right. Like
Yeah.
where's the sweet spot when people typically come to you or show interest in needing a CFO?
Right. I think that there's, to your comment about plateaus, I think there's like an initial plateau or a ceiling. We always use the term hitting the ceiling when I was an EOS implementer, and I see it over and over again. And what we need to do is embrace the fact that that's a good thing. Like when you hit that ceiling, it's like that represents some level of success. It probably feels like tension or pain because you might get frustrated at that point. But it's just something that's showing you that, hey, you need to break through whatever this is to get to the next one, because there's actually going to be another one. And then there's going to be another one, and hopefully another one and another one, because that's just the way it works. It's a cycle. And we just want to make sure that as we go through that cycle, that kind of the bottom is getting higher, and the top is getting higher as well as you continue to just break through. So there's a level of it where you just need to understand that that's part of it, and not be so frustrated that you're at one of those things. So if there's a sweet spot, I think there's two sweet spots. One is that first one. In property management, that can be anywhere from 150 to 300 doors, but it's relatively small. You're getting to that point. You're typically going to be an owner operator. Like you're doing a lot of the stuff, and you're trying to get out of doing a lot of the stuff. So you might be trying to work your way out of operations. You might be sick of going to houses. Or you might just be doing whatever it takes to try to get to a point where you can actually market the business. But there's these natural things where we kind of organically grow. If you're doing well, if you're providing a good service, you're going to grow. You should grow because your business is just doing enough that it's kind of demanding it. But then as you hit those ceilings, now it's like it's not demanding you to necessarily grow as a property manager. It's demanding you to grow as a leader, as a business person, as an entrepreneur. And that's where this whole concept really needs to open up for people to realize that, hey, this isn't about one thing. This isn't about finance. This isn't about sales. This isn't about operations. It's actually about all three working together. And that's where, I spend a lot of time just trying to coach people through to get them to the realization. When they're there, when they get it and they agree, then they can be committed to really solidifying. And for me, working with people, that's solidifying that finance piece to say, look, I've got to start getting the numbers and whatever that is. And there's a vision that I have through experience of what that needs to look like, and what that needs to look like can and will look different at different sizes of companies.
So if somebody said, okay, well, I want to move from that owner operator to growing a business. I want to get to that 300, 350 door mark from that 100, 150 doors where I'm kind of doing it all myself. It's a pretty logical step to say, okay, I need somebody to help me with my books. I need a bookkeeper. So what's the pros and cons of somebody at that point hiring a bookkeeper versus a CFO or a chief financial officer? Because
Yeah.
we're going to talk about what those differences are, but
Yeah.
like that initial step, it seems like a bookkeeper just seems easier. I can control them. I tell them exactly what to do, and hopefully they go out and do it. And they're probably not going to cost me as much as if I hired a full CFO. With your example with Matthew Whitaker, he's like, I don't know if I can afford that. So walk me through, how do we get people just in tuned with managing the finances, and should they hire a bookkeeper to start and then a CFO, or should we take an entirely different path? What's that look like?
Yeah, I think first the owner, they have to be real about where they are in terms of their financial acumen. Do they actually know? Like, if you have the ability, business owner, to actually do the accounting and run the reports and look at your business from a numbers perspective, if you have the ability to do that and tell yourself what the actual story is through the numbers and be able to repeat that process month by month, to be able to set a plan that tells the story in the same way, that establishes the gap of where you are from a fact number basis. Like, if you have that skill set, then you can actually hire somebody and lead them to do the bookkeeping side to produce what you want to produce. But that's what typically doesn't happen, is people start with, well, what do I need right now? What I need right now is bookkeeping, or I need bank reconciliations, or I need to get my owner statements out. So they tend to think about it from the perspective of, where am I right now? What needs done? What I like to do is tell people, hey, let's start to look at this like a visionary truly would, and say, well, where do you really want to go? Like, if you're a 100 door and you're trying to be 1,000 doors, what does that look like from a revenue perspective, from a profit perspective, from a cash flow, from a people perspective? What does it look like from the person that would be the leader inside of your finance function? And if you can look at that and say, well, it's still a bookkeeper, then good for you. Go hire the bookkeeper, because you are the CFO. If nobody's in that seat, if you're not calling anybody that, then you by default are that person if you're the business owner. And if you're not taking ownership and leadership of that function like a true CFO would, then you're leading yourself to who knows where. So what happens is you gotta look at that from where do you want to be, and then you got to say, okay, what is the next step? What is the next phase? And that typically for me looks at a 6 to 18 month type of outlook, to say, all right, how am I going to position myself in the next 6 to 18 months to be on track to get to where I really want to go in 3 to 5, 10 years? And this is where it's really just about the next step, but you can't figure out what the next step is until you know your long-term destination, because you might take that first step in the wrong direction, and that's where people screw up. It's like, you're never going to get where you want to go if your first step is backwards or sideways.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you say multiple times already today about telling the right story with your financial data, and if you don't know how to tell the story, or what story the number tells, what kind of story are we trying to put together? Are we trying to build up some fluffy visionary story where we're not really sure how we connect the dots, but we kind of know where we want to go? Or is it factual right out of our QuickBooks or our software? Like, what type of story are we trying to build, and what's the point of the story to begin with?
That's exactly right. I mean, there's one of the thing that's been really good, interesting about property management industry over the years since I've been involved has been this push to standardize data, and accounting data in particular. And it's allowed there to be a lot of comparison amongst companies in the industry and different sizes and things like that. And I think that's all great. But the word that I like to really dive into with people is relevance. Like, what is relevant to you? Like, is it relevant to you to compare yourself to the next property management company? It might be, but why? Like, you have to ask yourself why. I can compare myself to another person who is a fractional CFO or who does accounting work. I could compare myself to them, but why would I do that? For me, my relevance has a lot to do with my family and what I want my life to look like. For you, I mean, you want to be able to hike and go, do all these other things. It's like, as we get older and more mature and we have experiences in life and we have failures and setbacks, you know, I've had plenty of those, the relevant piece starts to get more clear. But what I like to add on with people is that when you have relevance in terms of your just your mindset and your desires and your why, and then you can attach those to numbers and facts, then you can really start to change your story. And if you don't have any history of doing that, like a financial history, monthly data inside your business matched up with what you're trying to do, then you really can't do that. You're still kind of not flying blind, but just kind of feeling it out. What you want to be able to do is say, hey, I want to try to go here. And in order to go here, I'm going to measure these 10 things. And then I'm going to come back and assess 3 months later, 6 months later. Did I get to where I wanted to go? Yes or no? If you did, then great. Keep track. Those numbers are good. They mean something. If they're not, then you got to change something. And you got to know what to look at when you change. And those are what the numbers are for. They're not all financial numbers, by the way, either. You know, there's a lot of different things you can look at. But it's when you can move faster when you know where you're trying to go and you have facts to back it up, and you can pivot very quickly. And if you're able to do that on a consistent cadence, you can go places typically much faster than people realize in my experience.
One of the things that I've noticed from the people that come into my coaching program is the ones that have the ability or the vulnerability to tie their business to their own personal goals. Like you said, to tell that story. Why, I'm going to be just really honest with you and with the audience. Having an extra $100,000 in my bank account does not really motivate me. But what does that $100,000 turn into? What could I do with that? That gets me really excited. But if I'm just about, let me stack some extra gold coins in my bank account, not excited. But what can I do from a volunteer standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a selfish standpoint of moving into a newer home or to investing in a new asset class or something like that, or even just providing a stronger foundation for my family and my children. We just had 3 grandkids in the last, about last 9 months. And so I'm starting to think, okay, well, that extra $100,000 isn't $100,000. It is college tuition for my grandkids. It's making sure that they have the ability to buy homes in the neighborhoods that I want them to be able to buy homes in. And all of a sudden you're turning what could just be spreadsheet data into this vision of tying something where the business becomes the vehicle that provides the resources to impact what really matters in life. And those are the ones, when they make those connections, those are the ones that seem to just outperform somebody that's just trying to grow or build or hit 1,000 doors or something like that. And is that something that you kind of work people through, or what do you see when it comes to that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's this concept, it's an accounting term you could use called margin, like profit margin. It's what's left over after you bring in all the revenue and you send out all the expenses. What's left over is your profit margin. And we can use that concept with our own self. Like, what is my margin of time? And if I'm trying to assess my own life, my own happiness, I know personally, if I don't have the right kind of margin available to myself, I'm not going to enjoy my life. I'm not going to be good for the people that I care about, whether those are people on my team, whether it's my wife, my kids. And so you can use that term kind of in different spaces. But if you just looked at it from the amount of time that you spend in business, if you working in your role, if you don't have enough margin to do the right things, then you need to course correct that. And that's like one of these, to me, numbers, there's an art and a science to it. Like, you're not going to track your actual time. I wouldn't expect an owner of a business to necessarily track every hour that they spend every day. But if you just looked at a few things and say, well, how much time do I spend thinking big? How much time do I spend thinking about my 10-year or my 5-year or my 1 year? What about your quarter? What about your month? What about your week? Well, I can tell you there's actually science to that, maybe not exact numbers, but I spend a full day every quarter planning out my quarter. I review and I look forward. I spend one and a half days looking at my next year. And during my next year, I take a couple hours of that to look at my 5-year and my 3-year. And so you got to be budgeting your time right. And on a weekly basis, you got to be taking at least 90 minutes to 2 hours to look at where you're at that month. Every Sunday, I look at my upcoming week, and it's like, some people think that this is tedious, that this is restrictive, and it's like, no, actually, this is what gives me freedom. Mm-hmm. Whenever I take my time to check in and plan, I was telling you before we got on the call, I played golf this morning before this call because I planned it out. I planned my whole week, like my activities with my kids, the games I got to go to. We're going to the beach this weekend. But like, I'm going to have a very productive week because when I'm working and I'm focused, that's what I'm doing. But I want to be able to have that same focus on the things that I enjoy doing, and the presence that I want to be, the presence that I want to have and display with my family and so on and so forth, and the fun and enjoyment that I want to have. So I think when you look at your margin, if you don't have enough time to even do that, which a lot of people don't, they'll be like, I don't have time to get on a call with you, Phil, or I don't have time to plan my week every week. That's your problem. Like, you just need to stop right there and say that's your problem, because you don't have time to hit it. You need a time out.
Yeah. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. If you're not going to do anything to change that, that's your life 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
100%. Right? And I'll tell you what, and I have to give credit to Matthew Whitaker, because 10 years ago, he introduced that inside the organization at Evernest. I mean, he handed out binders and was encouraging us to, at the end of each day, hey, reflect on your day for 5 minutes. And at the beginning of the next day, plan your top 3 things that you need to do. So anybody that's in the property management industry, that's like thinking about how you need to grow and stuff like that, like, learn how to be a disciplined person. Like, that's what I learned coming out of there. I mean, above all.
Yeah. So you've spent a lot of time now over the last few years. How long have you been operating as a CFO outside of, because I know we talked, your last true job where you worked for somebody else was working for Evernest, and I think that was around 2018 when you went off on your own?
In summer of 2018, yeah. So it's been almost 8 years now.
Okay, so over those 8 years, you've had a lot of opportunity to see inside of a lot of property management businesses. I want to dive in a little bit into what you see, and of course, keep confidential information confidential, but I think you can share some insights on what you see when people reach out to you. What are they struggling with, and what are their biggest challenges, the fears? What keeps them up at night that you're able to help them with to get some insight and some comfort and to start being at peace and seeing the path forward? What do people come to you with?
That's a great question. I think that, there's been a lot of different scenarios that I've encountered over the years, but there's not a lot of different, like, subject matter into that. I mean, People tend to come to me for two reasons. One, they're in some type of financial pain. It could be an accounting issue. It could be, we just got audited, or my employee left me, or somebody stole from me. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of stuff like that. But the other side is the person who just wants to grow. Mm-hmm. And they might be experiencing growth or have had some experience of growth, but they typically are in that ceiling that we talked about a few minutes ago. So it's those two things. But I think alongside that, or inside of that, number one, there's a lack of trust. Somewhere in that organization, there is a lack of trust. I don't trust this person, or I don't trust this set of customers that I have, or I don't trust this vendor that I'm thinking about using to help me with marketing or sales. Something in there, and they might not use the word trust, and honestly, they typically don't. But what they're looking for is a higher level of trust and a higher level of clarity on how to do something or what the next move should be. And so what I like to tell people to do is, like, look, what we have to do there is we need to get clear on what we actually do know. And we gotta not like question that stuff anymore. So I'll give you an example. Like, everybody has people. You're not going to build a company without good people. Well, I've dealt with a lot of questions about paying people. How much should I pay this person or pay that person? And should I incentivize them, or this, that, and the other thing? And it's like, look, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to nickel and dime everybody on your team? Like, are you trying to save money? Or are you trying to build a culture in an organization of growth? So are you doing things the same throughout, or you have conflicting things that you're doing inside of your company? Meaning you want it to be one way, but you're acting another way. So those kind of things have to be cleaned up if there's any inconsistencies there. But to get to that trust piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive that through numbers. It's like, well, what do you actually know? Because, look, I wake up every morning feeling different, just like anybody else. You might feel good, you might feel like crap, but like, what really changed this morning? Like, or do I just feel bad because it's cloudy outside? What are the facts? I'm healthy. I'm the same as I was yesterday. Like, so let's get clear on the facts, and then let's go, okay, let's just shake the dust off and go, well, what am I going to do now? And that's where the focus happens. So if you've got an employee, for example, that did something that you were like, why did they do that? Well, okay, was that what's consistently happening? Or are they actually doing everything you expect them to do, and they just had a bad day? And how do you know that? Well, you know it through the numbers. Everything needs to be aligned. Your employee productivity and how you measure them, it needs to be objective, and it needs to be in alignment with where you want the company to go. And that's actually very simple, but most people don't do it. So how do you trust that the business is running when you're not there and in the office? You got to have numbers. You got to have a scorecard to tell you, and you got to be able to rely on that, because they used to I was trained in EOS, and the training was put a scorecard together that would represent, if you were on a beach and everybody was back at the office, because you're on a beach doing what you really want to do, and the business was running itself, how would you know how well it's doing? You would only be able to do that through numbers. So that's how you get that trust. And I think that's what everybody is really looking for, because what do they do when they don't trust numbers? They open the bank account. And I'm like, ugh. Like, yes, it's great that your bank account, that you see it grow. But if you look at your bank account the day after you process management fees, it's going to look great. If you look at the day after you sent out payroll and paid your Amex, it's going to look like crap. So do you really want to deal with that up and down throughout the month? Because that's not how the business actually operates. You got to understand cash flow and things like that so that you do have trust.
So if you have those two people that come to us, so the first one is people that are feeling pain and they have had somebody steal from them, or they're good at sales. There's only a few ways that most people get into the property management business. They're either an investor, that can't find somebody that is going to manage the properties as good as they can. So they start a management company, they start managing their own, then they start, somebody asks them, can you manage mine? And it's sort of, so they have this investor mindset where everything needs to be as cheap as possible because I, as the investor, wouldn't tolerate paying a trip charge for a vendor to go out or something like that. So they really think that way. The other way is I got into this business because I was good at sales and I was selling a lot of real estate, and people said, well, I'll buy that investment property, but I don't want to manage myself. And so they say, well, I'll manage it. So they come through the sales channel. And then there's a third where I see, for whatever reason, there are engineer types that are not necessarily great people, but they're great process people. And so you kind of have these different personas that come into the business, and each one of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. But you're going to have people that come to you that just are in pain, say, I need somebody to just help me take over the financial aspect of the business. Like, I still need to know what's going on, but I don't want to I don't want to be the one that opens the bank account and does the balance sheets and, looks at all this stuff. And then you mentioned the other type of person that you said, well, they're doing pretty well, but they want to grow. Do they really have different needs? And if so, what are they? Or do they have similar needs? They just need to be spoken to, telling the same story but using different language to get them to the same destination.
Yeah, it's a great question, and in my opinion, the answer is that they all need the same stuff. It's a matter of who's going to deliver the goods. And so, in your example, you have three different types of people. Well, if they're all the owners of the business, then they're essentially going to have to decide for themselves what role do they want to actually have inside the organization. And especially when you're first starting out, I mean, you're going to have to take on multiple roles. I mean, you're going to have to follow like the whole E-Myth, strategy of like, you got to fill these seats, and who's going to fill those seats. But some people are more visionary than others. And just because somebody's more visionary doesn't mean that they get to be all the business owners. Somebody can still be a business owner and not have the greatest visionary mindset. Really, the visionary mindset doesn't need to be used 100% of the time. It's really going to be, it's probably going to be a problem if you're acting all visionary all the time, because it's going to confuse people. Like, you got the lead operators, they're out there to get stuff done, and that can be a problem too, because if you're just an operator, you're just going to be doing all day, and you're never going to think big picture. So it takes a team, and it takes different types of people, different skill sets. Now, people can grow and enhance and work together to collectively. And that's where, if you're a business owner and you're looking for help from somebody like me or you, or just any like kind of expert, coach, consultant whatsoever, it's a matter of getting them in the right space. And you might need multiple people. But at the end of the day, when it comes to finance stuff, like, the book's got to be closed. I mean, there's certain standards that just have to be met. I could give you 10 different things that sit under the finance function. They all need to be done. If I'm the CFO, these are all going to be done. And it's just a matter of how are we going to get these done? Am I going to do them? Are you going to have a person on your team that does them? It's going to be a collective effort to get all of that stuff done. And the same needs to be said under your operations of your business, in the sales and marketing engine of your business. They all need to get done. So, I like to toot the finance function, right? Because it's like, well, who's gonna help you assess whether all of those functions are actually working? That's where there does have to be data. So you have to come up with measurables to represent that. But then, as the business, once you've set up that, if you want to grow, again, you don't have to grow, right? But if you don't want to grow, then you're just really managing a job, and that's fine if that's your choice, if you want to manage a job. But if you want to grow, you have to say, am I going to be the visionary that actually helps pull the vision out and brings my team into that as well? Or do I want somebody to facilitate that for me so that I can think and dream. And so that's one thing that I do with folks is we help them set the long-term vision for their life and their business. And if there's a leadership team involved, we bring that into them too. Some people like to do that on their own. When I was at Evernest, Matthew did that in the early days. He led that. There's a challenge to that, but it can be done. Other people are just like, you tell me what to do, and I'll give you my 2 cents. You tell me when to talk, because it's hard to. It's that discipline factor. I mean, some people just really struggle with discipline and organizing meetings and things like that. Some people, if you just tell them, they'll show up and they'll be there, be present for that meeting, and they'll go crush it. And like you said, there's process people. I mean, there's all these different things, and I think people just need to know who they are, and then what they need to supplement themselves to make that that whole team really work.
You mentioned before that there are multiple parts of the company that have to come together. There was finance, operations, sales. Mm-hmm. Are those all things that as entrepreneurs we are expected to be good at and that we need to do on our own, or like in each one of those areas? So operations, there's people out there that can help us with operations. There's people out there that can help us with sales. There's people that are out there that can help us with finances. If I hired somebody, if I'm a small business owner and I hired somebody to help me with each one of those things, I now have 3 different C-level people in my organization. And frankly, at 300 doors, if I bring in 3 C-suite type of people to work for my company full time, I'm probably not buying groceries for myself.
Yeah.
Because I spent all the money, right? So how do we help people get where they're getting help with the operations, they're getting help with sales, and they're getting help with the financial piece? Explain what that would look like for somebody to engage with you or a company like yours, where, like, are they bringing in a full-time CFO? Are they bringing in somebody to stack on top of a bookkeeper? Are they outsourcing things entirely? Like, where are you seeing the best success for people where it kind of takes, and when I say check the box, I don't mean like check the box and move on, but like we've accomplished everything we want to accomplish on the financial side. Where are you seeing people have the most success with building that out?
Yeah, I think one thing that I would really caution people to is if they're hiring like whether it's internal or a fractional or consultant like you or I, they really have to know what they're looking for. And that can be hard sometimes if you're going into an area that you don't know about. It's like, I'm coming to you for help because I don't know. And so, but I would go in there with that to whoever you're talking to and say, help me understand what I need to know. Like if I got on a call with somebody, I'm going to explain to them in depth what they need from their finance function and what I can do for them. Not what I'm going to do or what I'm going to have to do, but I'm just going to say, hey, look, this is what a certain standard of excellence is, and I can help you figure out what it's going to take. And that can be a series of conversations that I usually can get people about 75% there from a perspective standpoint in a 30 to 60 minute call. But the details of it, what you need to do now, how much you should invest in a certain service or a certain person, that's highly dependent on where you're trying to go and the speed at which you're trying to do that. So that's where the relevance comes into place. But that's what that's where I say, look, if you don't have this core of financial numbers, it's going to be really hard for you to assess somebody that you're hiring for marketing help or an employee that you're bringing on. There's been many times over the years where someone's like, man, I just got to bring in a COO. I'm going to bring in the guy that's going to run the operation. That almost never works because all that really means is the owner's burnt out. That's really what it means. And what they really need to do is focus on the business process side and writing the right job description and getting clear on what they really want. But what typically happens is, or what I've seen over the years, is they just hire the person and then they really give them a lot less direction than they really think they're giving them, because they haven't painted the picture of expectations with a proper org chart, with a proper long-term plan, with numbers that back it all up to set all the clarity. But I'm telling you, man, I have seen it. I have seen success where people have gotten super clear through processes like EOS. Like, it freaking works. Like, I'll tell you, back in my, the Evernest days, we iterated over and over and over again about what our core function or core process. It was the VTO side of EOS. We just kept going over this one piece, and we couldn't figure it out. And it was so frustrating and so annoying, but we kept coming back to it. And what we landed on while I was there was that essentially developing people was actually our niche. It was developing people. It wasn't property management. It was developing people. And it was like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's just go with it. And we went with it. And if you look at how they've built themselves, it's on people. It's a unique approach to people. And it can be different for different. But I'll tell you one thing is, like, Matthew, the owner, he was passionate about that. I already gave you an example. Like, we can build people. Okay. Like, there's more than one way to do this. But if you're focusing on like if you're looking like so narrowly at property management, you might not be able to see what you really need to see. You need to take a step back and really paint that vision. And the other thing about that is that vision will evolve over time. What you really want, what's relevant for you, certain pieces of that will come more clear just because you focus on it more. It'll come into clarity. And then other things will just evolve because you're going to grow and change as an individual. We just grow up, right? Our life changes, whether you have kids, grandkids, get divorced. I mean, who knows? There's all kinds of things that can happen that will change what you think you really want. But the key is, if you continually ask yourself the question over and over and over again, you'll dial it in. And when you start to dial that in for yourself as the leader, then you can drive so much more clarity to the people on your team.
You touched on something that I think is really important, and I share this perception with you. The up to, say, a first 100, 150 doors, you're in the property management business. After that, you're in the people business.
Yeah.
And up to 350 doors, you're in that people management business. But beyond that, when you get to 500, 600, 800,000, you're not even in the people business. You're in the people management business, where your job is to train other people on your team how to be good leaders with their people, and then those people become really good at being proficient at the property management business. But I think we lose that as we grow up in the organization. As our organization gets bigger, a lot of entrepreneurs have a really hard time letting go of creating the processes for the frontline workers. When the frontline workers are out there battling the battle every day, they know the best way to go about doing a move in, a move out, a turnover, a property turn, and they should be helping us provide the processes that help us uphold our policies. And we should be thinking high level. These are the policies, which are what we do and why we do it, and the process is how we do it, and the procedures are the step-by-step actions we take. And I think at each one of those levels, as we level up in the organization, we have to be willing to let go of the things that now belong to other people on our team. And I think people really, really struggle with that when they start a business from scratch, because nobody can do it as good as me. And
Yep.
That's just a lie.
It is a lie, and it can hurt sometimes when we realize that lie. But if you're willing to get over that quickly, then it'll really serve you. Because it's funny, as you were talking, I thought about one of the common things I see with business owners when it comes to finances, is particularly as they're growing and they're talking about bringing people in. they're so hesitant to share financial data with their team. Like, I can't, it is like, it's laughable to me just because it's kind of silly, because once we get over that threshold, they're like, realize it really wasn't a thing. But there's many times when, like, oh man, reviewing the P&L, that's only for me and the owner. Like, we're not going to show this to somebody else. Or like, hey Phil, can you do some version of this report that doesn't actually show the profit? Like, it's like, well, what are you trying to tell them? Like, that we don't make any money? Because, like, they think that the people are going to, see that they make so much money and they're going to look at you differently. And I'm like, hell, if that's your problem, then, like, let's go face that problem. Right? But the real problem is, like, they're more likely to be scared if you're not making money. They're going to go, this is not a good place to work. Right?
Yeah, there's two fears, right? There's two fears. Is I'm working for a place that I don't know if they're going to be in business next month because it sounds like we're not making any money. Or the other fear is I'm putting in all this time and effort, I'm doing all the work, and then the owner of the company is taking home bags of cash. And, so there's this balance of, well, I want my team to know that they have a safe place to work and that things are running smoothly, and we've got money and we've got this vision and we're growing and we're going to expand and provide new opportunities, and there's room for us to move up if we hit these growth goals. There's room for promotions. But the flip side of that is we don't want them to think we're making too much money. So how do you reconcile that with people?
Yeah, so couple comments. First, anybody who's not the owner of the business, if that's how you're thinking, like, you have no idea what it's like to run a business. So they deserve every dollar that they get if they're making money, because they don't sleep. There's so much stress. But here's the way I see it. If this really, when this is like the perfect template on how to run finances through your business, everybody can see the numbers. Everybody can see the profit and loss of the business. And everybody has a couple numbers that they're tied to, that they get incentivized on. So they have their own mini profit and loss statement for their job or their department, and they should be incentivized on that. Now, it takes a while to get here, but it is possible, and I've seen it and I've done it. If you tie each individual person with an incentive where they're going to make more money, that ties into the owner and the business making more money, that's the mic drop moment inside of finance. That's exactly what you want. That's what everybody's going to be happy about, because people care about money. Let's not get it twisted. People care about money. Everybody does. What we need to do is actually use that for good and for everybody. Everybody wants to win on the team. Well, it doesn't make sense if the owner's winning and other people are losing. Yeah, that's stupid. Like, if you're the owner of the business and you're making 30% profit, and if you're driving slave labor, like, I'm sorry, I just can't get on board with that. But figure it out. It is something that can be figured out, and if you bring people in to help you, you can get it done. No, and I'm not just talking about people like me. I'm talking about the leaders on your team. Start with the leaders on your team, or the people that you want to develop into leaders. Start to bring them into financial conversations. This is one thing in the last couple of years for myself that I've learned, this is a high value add to a business, is for me to be in that leadership team meeting more frequently, talking through the scorecard, not just reading numbers, talking through it and saying, hey guys, now that we've got this trend of numbers, what does it mean to us? Because that's really what you should be asking yourself. I tell people, ask yourself this question. If you're trying to find out the number to measure an employee on, just ask them, what type of behavior am I trying to drive from my employee? What result do I want to see from my employee? And then go, well, what number or numbers is going to show me that is happening? Just keep it simple like that. Don't feel like it needs to be a 4-digit account number on your P&L statement that the property manager gets tied into. It doesn't need to be that. I mean, it could be showing up on time. It could be For some people, it literally needs to be that because they need to be almost out the door. But literally, like, you don't need to be measuring certain things if people can't show up to work. It's like, hey, look, I'm going to measure you showing up to work for the next 2 weeks. If you can get that done, then we'll talk about the next thing you're going to be measured on. But don't overcomplicate it. Ask simple questions, try to get simple answers, build from there.
Yeah. Well, Phil, we've been on this for a little bit here. I want to give you a chance to wrap up and share. If people were interested in finding out a little bit more about the services that you provide, I want to give you a chance to kind of share what those services are and then how they could reach out to you and engage with just opening up a conversation to see if it's a right fit. So I'm going to give you that, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. There's easiest way to contact me. I have no problem with people just emailing me directly. It's Philip with 1 L at thecfomission.com. You can go to the website, thecfomission.com. All my information's there. In terms of what we do or what I do, the first thing is have a conversation with somebody and help you figure out what you might need, what the next step might be for you. And so you can get on a free call with me and I'll help you with that. Longer term engagements, for me, kind of, again, depends on needs. A lot of times I'll jump in with somebody for 3 to 6 months and help get them through something, whether that's building out a vision for you, like from an EOS standpoint, a 10-year plan. Sometimes it's cleaning up some financial issues in your accounting and maybe solving that issue for you long term. So we do bookkeeping and things like that. We do your monthly accounting and stuff like that. If that's something you need. But what I really like to help people with is really getting them clear on what they need. And if it's something I can help with, if you got a big plan and you wanna be the next Evernest, we can talk about how hard that's going to be too. But I love having those conversations. So happy for anybody who reaches out to do that.
All right, very good. Well, Phil, it's been a pleasure having you on and talking through this with you. It's been a long time coming. We've been having conversations through Facebook Messenger and over the years, and it was just really exciting to have you on, and I appreciate all the wisdom you shared with our audience today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tony.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Talk to you later.